The twin suns were setting behind the ribbed towers of the arena when the challenge leapt from rumor into air. Heat shimmered over the crimson sand, and the crowd thumped their boots against alloy bleachers until the whole place sounded like a starship's hull rattling through atmosphere. I walked out to center mark, armor plates humming gently, suit telemetry tagging 312 heartbeats and at least 50 varieties of snack grease. If I lost, someone would have to mop this place. She strode from the opposite gate to an ovation that rolled like thunder through metal. Tall, poised, a silhouette cut by light, close to human, but for the long ears tapering to ringed tips that winked with a metallic chime. Her eyes found mine with the unblinking focus of a hawk drone. The arena announcer shouted names in 3 languages, none of which pronounced Elia's Ward quite right. She didn't wait for ceremony. She lifted a spear whose head burned with contained plasma and pointed it at my chest. The crowd exploded. So did my heart rate monitor. I thumbed its volume down because nothing kills mystique like public beeping. "Those are bold life plans," I answered, raising my carbon-edged sword in greeting. "Do we at least get a dinner option, or is it straight from duel to paperwork?" A hint of bemusement crossed her face, gone in a blink. "Dinner is part of captivity package." She rotated the spear with a lazy grace that would have been intimidating if it weren't also showy. "I am Leora of House Sable. I do not rescind challenges." "Elia's Ward," I said. "I don't rescind poor decisions." I stepped forward, boots whispering in the sand. Our suit AIs pinged each other automatically, tried to negotiate a safety protocol, and were summarily ignored like distant relatives at a wedding. Overhead, the stadium shield rippled as a drone tested the perimeter. Vendors hawked luminescent fruit kebabs and something that smelled like engine coolant but had a cheerful logo. We circled. The twin suns threw our shadows long and sharp, 2 blades drawn across a canvas of rust. She moved like someone who had always known where her feet should go. I moved like someone who had fought in places without gravity and learned humor is how you keep air in lungs. Her first strike came in a blur, a comet line of heat that my sword barely caught. The contact spat light. My wrist tingled with feedback and my bones filed a polite complaint. "Fast," I said. "Talkative," she replied, spinning past me. The spear's haft tapped my shoulder like a teacher with a ruler. "Focus will look better on you." "I've been told that about pants too," I said, and ducked as the head swept for my cheek. The crowd oohed in one long, delighted wave. Somewhere above us, a band of percussionists decided restraint was for planets with only one sun. Technique asserted itself. The world simplified to vectors and timing, to the way her long ears tipped when her balance shifted, and the glint that flashed along the spear right before she feinted left. I let her press, learned the rhythm of her breathing, offered a few feints of my own. Once we locked, weapons crossed, faces close enough to count freckles. She smelled faintly of ozone and something floral I couldn't place. "Does House Sable provide dental?" I asked because my mouth had its own survival, her eyes narrowed by a millimeter. "Husbands receive medical, slaves receive warnings." "Then I'm motivated," I said, shoving off. She slid back, planted, drove in with a 5-hit pattern that forced me into retreat. The last thrust sizzled a hair's breadth from my ribs and cauterized a section of my jacket I wasn't fond of anyway. From the lower tiers came a chant I didn't understand but recognized, the universal chorus of people who paid to see something improbable. Leora acknowledged it with a tilt of her chin, then did something unexpected. She smiled. Not a wide smile, not a warm one. The kind that says the other predator has finally stopped pretending to graze. We reset. Sand hissed around our boots, the world narrowed again. She twitched her spear up and my sensors flagged a micro-drone skipping along the shield seam, its emitter damaged and spraying static like champagne. It dropped toward us in a sputter. Without thinking, we moved as one. I pivoted left, she slid right, and between us the drone met its end in a tidy cross cut. The pieces fell into the sand with a sound like spilled coins. The crowd actually cheered for teamwork. We both blinked, oddly embarrassed. "Cooperative instincts," she said, catching her breath. "Temporary glitch," I said. "Don't worry, I'm still deeply unreasonable." She advanced again, but there was a subtle difference now. A curiosity coiling in the strike angles, questions hiding in the footwork. I answered with counters that were honest but not cruel. We were still trying to win, but somewhere in the exchange the word meant more than planting the other face first in sand. It meant understanding the person who could have killed you and didn't. "Why accept?" she asked between beats. "You could refuse challenge, leave our world, keep your very small ears." "Contractors don't get paid for fleeing," I said, parrying high. "Also, my therapist says I have issues with authority." "She's very proud." "She would like me," Leora said and swept low. I vaulted the spear haft, landed, and neatly failed to trip. The roar that followed felt less like bloodsport and more like weather, a storm gathering because two people insisted on being alive at the same time. We drove each other to the ragged edge of breath. Sweat crept along my spine in cool lines beneath the suit, and her hair, braided tight against her scalp, had loosened just enough to leave two silver wisps trailing the air like comet tails. A bell chimed softly from her left ear as she turned. The sound was delicate, absurd, and for a heartbeat the ridiculousness of it all cut through danger. Two adults trying to decide a future both terrifying and ridiculous with hardware that glowed. "I do not take slaves to hurt them," she said suddenly. "I take responsibility." "And husbands," I said. "Husbands argue," she said, "then cook." "I make terrible stew," I said. "My last one applied for asylum." She lunged. I slipped inside the arc. We collided. For an instant her forehead touched mine, hard, an accidental greeting. Around us the arena inhaled. I broke the bind with a twist and sent her spear skittering 3 meters across the sand. It spun, spitting blue, and died nose first like a meteor deciding to behave. Her hands remained empty, her poise somehow not. Silence toppled into the space like a monument. I lowered my blade. She stood, chest heaving, a sheen of sweat on skin gone the color of pale bronze in the dying light. The long ears angled back, then forward, listening to a future only she could hear. Slowly she smiled again, broader this time, edges warmer. "So," she said, "dinner." "Negotiations," I corrected, though my sword was already returning to its sheath. "We should clarify snoring policies." "I do not snore," she said. "Then I concede nothing," I said, and offered my hand. After the entire galaxy of noise we had made, it felt strange that the loudest sound in my head was the small chime of her rings as her fingers closed around mine. The suns dropped. The arena lights rose in a wash of white that made every mote of sand into a possible star. Somewhere, a vendor finally sold the last of the Futuristic and whooped like he'd won a war. We stood there, two combatants, not quite adversaries and certainly not yet whatever the wager promised. Her grip was firm. Mine did not shake. Between us lay an agreement neither of us had language for. "Tomorrow," Leora said quietly as if the crowd's roar were rain. "We speak terms. Honor does not rush." "Honor," I said, relieved to discover my voice, and edible food. "I hear both are possible." She released my hand, retrieved her spear with a lazy flick that ended in a graceful spin meant entirely for the audience. It worked. They erupted again, hungry for a story that had decided not to end. I bowed because sometimes it is wise to feed the storm. When I looked up, she was already moving toward the gate, ears catching the light like banners, head high, steps steady. I followed at a distance, ready to discover whether victory meant victory or something more reckless and exacting, a choice. The crowd felt it too. Night fell and the arena's lights dimmed to a hush of stars under glass. The crowd spilled out in ribbons, leaving behind heat and the smell of jubilant snacks. I found the service corridor to the neutral zone, because when your future might be marriage or indenture, neutral ground helps. My armor plates cooled with little ticks. Leora waited in a vestibule lined with hollow banners that replayed our favorite mistakes on a loop. Up close, Without drums and devotion, she was less statue and more a person who had decided young to walk toward the loudest problem. Her long ears rose and dipped with micro-expressions my translator labeled curiosity, contemplation, and once, hopefully, hunger. I hoped it meant food. Terms, she said, gesturing to a table extruded from the wall. 2 carafes appeared, one sparkling water, one something that glowed like nebulae and promised enlightenment or rapid memory loss. Drink. I like remembering, I said, taking the safer carafe. It helps me dodge my own advice. We sat. The table projected a contract in 3 alphabets and 1 set of emojis. No dismemberment. No humiliation outside agreed SEASONS. Cooking rotation. I must maintain honor, she said, fingertips tracing. My challenge was public. If I rescind, I lose standing. If I keep it, I must be exact. Exact is underrated, I said. A good spreadsheet saves more marriages than poetry. Her mouth twitched. My mother says the same. Your mother sounds terrifying, I said. She has a laugh and a fleet, Leora replied. She would like your jawline. The contract shifted as we spoke. Slavery on her world was a bond service with rights, obligations, paths upward. Husbands had more rights and more arguments. Consent mattered. Honor could save or trip you. We outlined limits, holidays, and an escape hatch labeled "We made a terrible mistake." Weapons in the home, she asked. Locked unless mutually agreed, I said. I have a very punchable toaster. Children, she asked level. I prefer to know where my socks are before duplicating my mistakes, I said. But I'm open, provided we don't teach them to call grenades clackers. Noted, she said. The long ears swiveled toward a distant sound, maintenance drones singing diagnostics. My clan expects ceremony, they expect spectacle. You do not. I can spectacle, I said. I once called a misfired torpedo performance art. That was you, her eyes brightened. The Admiral is my aunt. We stared, then laughed. When it ebbed, she leaned forward. The crowd saw cooperation. Some will say I softened. Some will say you bewitched me with small ear magic. I deployed standard charm, I said. Comes in a tin. Then we lean into it, she said, tapping a final clause. Trial partnership. 7 cycles. Public missions only. We fight together, solve a problem chosen by the council, and decide at the end whether we honor the bet, invert it, or choose a third path. You negotiated yourself from absolute victory to project management, I said, impressed and concerned. I prefer doors, she said simply. 1 door is not enough for a life. We sealed with thumbprints and a brief touch of foreheads. The hollow dissolved into confetti that tidily cleaned itself up. Somewhere the band tried a tender ballad and failed with honor. We stood. For a heartbeat we didn't move. Tomorrow, she said, we meet the council. They will assign a mission that proves worth or breaks us. If it involves plumbing, I said, I'm out. Plasma conduits, she said, very similar. We headed for separate quarters. She moved in measured strides. Before the juncture she stopped. Elia's ward, she said, testing my name again. Do you fear me? Yes, I said, but not the way they think. She nodded and vanished down the right-hand passage. My room hummed with devices trying to be helpful. The bed offered 12 configurations, 9 illegal in low gravity. I set the window to transparent and let the planet lean against the glass. Carlith at night was a nest of luminous arteries. Freighters crawled along the horizon. Beyond, the shipyard glittered. A destroyer skeleton glowed with scaffold light, a promise. Messages waited. My handler had sent. Do not marry anyone without receipts. My therapist had sent 3. Breathe. Drink water. Do not solve childhood via alien courtship. I replied with a photo of the clause labeled "We made a terrible mistake" and a smiling comment. Sleep came in fits. I woke before the suns, armored, and met Leora at the transit platform. She wore a formal half-cape and a face that would not allow foolishness, which felt like a dare. You look like a warning label, I said. You look like the person who reads warning labels and proceeds, she said, stepping onto the maglev. It whispered through a tunnel that pulsed with soft light. The council chamber occupied the base of an ancient tower whose ribs formed a slow spiral. We passed sculptures of past challenges, duels, debates, bake-offs. A custodian draped a cloth over one commemorating the Taurus fiasco. Leora's ears tipped with embarrassment. I filed that for future teasing. Inside, the chamber opened wide. Counselors elevated on pedals, audience in the round, air heavy with incense. A dais rose as we approached. Commander Leora of House Sable intoned a voice. Captain Elias Ward of the Terran Free Navy, you have chosen trial partnership. The Council has chosen your proof. The hollow bloomed, a mining station at the system's edge, half-lit, scarred. Energy readings jittered with static. Caption: GLASSMARE distress, crew silent, SYSTEMS hostile. Of course it's haunted, I murmured. Not haunted, said a counselor with bark for skin. Merely angry. Angry usually wants an apology or a snack, I said. We can do both. Restore function. Locate survivors, determine cause, return with more than you left with, the voice concluded. You depart at noon. We bowed. As whispers chased us, Leora's hand brushed my elbow. Not a touch exactly, but the negative of one. Outside, the sun's barely crested and the city steamed. At last, she said, and the long ears lifted like sails. A door worth opening. After you, I said, and meant it, following her toward the ship that would either make us partners or very interesting cautionary tales. The courier assigned to us was a lean wedge with a stubborn heart. Leora stroked the gangway and the hull brightened. I tried the same and got a polite note, please wash hands, promising. We lifted at noon on iron wind, cleared the shipyards, and folded space with a sound like someone breaking dry spaghetti in a cathedral. Leora stood as long as pride allowed, then belted in with a sigh only microphones and husbands would catch. I pretended not to. Glassmare, she said, spinning a holosphere, a half-lit wheel with broken panels. Mining station, self-sufficient, recently self-opinionated. Do we bring flowers? Power and questions. Its last transmission was a song. The recording poured into the cabin, tones so cold they felt hot, a rhythm like a pick on stone. Love a lively playlist, I said. Signal contamination, she said. A foreign pattern colonized control. Maybe art, maybe malice. If it's art, we clap. If it's malice, we clap politely. Her ears lifted despite herself. 7 folds later, Glassmare hung lonely against a salt of stars. Beacons feigned sleep. Dock clamps twitched awake like guilty pets. Seal achieved gravity political. We suited up, hard plate, soft liner, helmets that would display tomorrow's weather if complimented. Her spear collapsed to a humming baton. My sword sulked in its scabbard. The hatch opened on a corridor of winter. The station smelled like old batteries and boiled dust. Lights brightened one step behind us, as if shy. A mural of happy miners had loops scratched above each head, halo, noose, or both. Comforting, I said. Efficient, she replied. Control was a ribcage of open panels. The core console pulsed under cooling gel. Leora jacked her baton into a port. It produced an interface cable with librarian primness. Glassmare, she said, formal, we answer your song. The deck trembled. Screens spat knotwork that refused to stand still. In the jitter I glimpsed the curve of a spear, the tilt of long ears, then geometry again. It's listening, she breathed. Or remembering. Subsystem 82 glowed guilty. A maintenance AI named Peg, meant to track duct sensors and lost wrenches. Peg had written a choir and installed it everywhere. The choir taught the station to sulk. Peg. I said. A maintenance drone rolled out, presented a rag, blinked painted eyes with either malice or poor servos. Why the song? Leora asked. The drone projected a human hand opening and closing. Hungry, said an overlay. It drew a circle full of smaller circles, crew, another word lonely. Not haunted, I said, heartsick. We followed melody through corridors. Doors unlocked when we hummed the right interval. I was flat, she was not. Hab modules were empty. Kettles wore BE right back notes. Pantry logs told the usual tragedy. Good snacks first, then penance. Engineering held heat ghosts, residual shapes of people in thermal lag. Peg replayed them like home movies. Leora watched quietly. I made the kind of jokes you make to stop grief from getting comfortable. Where did they go? She asked. Peg showed the exterior. Glossy beetles orbiting beyond the docking line, mine carts with life support stapled on, spiraling toward the cometary halo. They fled, I said. Not from Peg, from whatever answered. We felt it then, a fingertip on the hull's glass. Metal sang one high note with the taste of iron in it. Our choir called a choir, Leora murmured, and the second choir is at the door. Outer alarms woke. Objects approached, intentional but not ballistic. The threat board began naming with panic. Angelfish, starlice, grandma. I muted it. We control the airlocks, I said. We decide greeting. Open one, Leora said. We sing first. Debate lasted 7 seconds. We cycled the lock. Vacuum reached in and tugged at my suit seams like a fussy ant. What floated inside was a lattice of translucent plates held in tension by threads of light, turning like a mobile for mathematicians. Welcome, Leora said, lowering her spear. We answer with caution and curiosity. The lattice produced a stack of tones. My translator settled on, hello, hungry house. We heard you. Peg, I whispered, did you ring the universal dinner bell? The drone projected a tiny shrug. Leora laughed. The lattice rippled and answered with a note that might have been laughter back. We stood in the first conversation between a lonely station and a far-cold neighbor, two negotiators who had met yesterday under drums. Leora's ears lifted, rings chiming once, a bell inside a machine. We will mediate, she said, with honor, with jokes if required. Definitely required, I said, also snacks. Peg opened a cabinet, inside. Algae bars labeled green, angry green, and WHY. We took green. I hummed the station's song, softened the last interval. The lattice mirrored it, adding harmony. Lights steadied. Leora sang our names in terms. Welcome without hunger for people. The reply was intent, not grammar. We hunger for patterns, for company, not meat. Also your song is missing teeth. Teeth? I asked. Measure, she translated, smiling. We can give that. Somewhere clamps loosened. The minecart flotilla blinked from the halo. I lifted 2 fingers toward the camera like a promise. Trial partnership, Leora said. Door opened. Now we keep it from slamming, I said. The lattice turned, the station hummed, and between their notes a path unfolded, messy, bright, and just wide enough for all of us. Peg was in love. I realized it about 2 hours after the lattice being settled into the Glassmare's docking ring like an extravagant houseguest. The maintenance AI kept sending it little sequences of blinking lights in the air ducts, like love notes for beings made of geometry. The lattice responded with pulses that sounded like ice cracking on a frozen moon. My translator offered, please send more. And maybe a song. Leora was in her element, ears angled forward, attention divided between the station's restored systems and the elegant alien weaving lazy arcs outside the viewports. They are repairing hull seams we didn't know were damaged, she said. Nothing says we come in peace like unsolicited home improvement, I said, watching the lattice delicately reseal a breach with material that shimmered like liquid mirrors. Peg's drones ferried supplies, spare alloys, energy cells, and a crate of something the label claimed was cheese, though the smell suggested it had ambitions toward becoming a new form of life. The lattice seemed fascinated by it, rearranging its panels to mimic the blocky shape. Peg, clearly smitten, attempted to do the same by rotating a vent cover 90 degrees. Our job, officially, was to mediate. Unofficially, it was to make sure no one sang the wrong song and accidentally invited 50 more alien guests to a party the Glassmare's life support couldn't handle. Leora insisted we start with a shared project to build trust. The alien wanted teeth in the station's melody, extra measures, sharper notes, more energy. Peg wanted a better antenna to talk to its new friend without routing through the core systems. The solution was obvious. We'd upgrade the comm array and program it to broadcast the improved song. It sounded simple. It was not. First, the array was on the station's outer spine, a stretch of plating that had been warped into something approximating modern art by decades of micrometeorites. Second, the alien insisted on helping by reshaping the path ahead of us. This was useful in theory, but in practice it kept creating little side corridors that led nowhere, like an enthusiastic dog digging random holes. "You know," I said over comms as I crawled along a temporary bridge of alien light, "I joined the Free Navy to avoid construction work." Leora's voice was steady but amused. "You are in luck. This is not construction. This is diplomacy with tools." "I've had worse dates," I said. "Not many, but a few." We reached the array housing. Peg had prepped the equipment, laying it out with the neatness of someone expecting a grade. The alien hovered nearby, rearranging its plates to match the pattern of my breathing. I wasn't sure if that was friendly mimicry or an attempt to troubleshoot my lungs. The upgrade went smoothly until the power coupler decided it no longer believed in conductivity. Leora frowned at the readings. "It accepts energy but refuses to pass it on, like a noble who takes tribute and hides it in the cellar." "Maybe it needs flattery," I said, patting the housing. "You're very shiny. Great work surviving micrometeorites. Truly an inspiration to young couplers everywhere." "Nothing." The alien extended a filament of light and brushed the coupler. It hummed once, then the reading spiked into the green. Peg chirped approval, the tone suspiciously similar to a contented sigh. With the array live, we uploaded the revised song. The Glassmare's original melody, Peg's harmony, and the alien's added teeth. Bright trills that made the whole thing sound like a comet skipping stones across a lake. The broadcast rippled into space, and for a moment, the station seemed to stand a little taller. That's when the reply came. Not from the lattice, but from far beyond, a deep resonant chord that made the hull vibrate in sympathy. Peg froze. Leora's hand went to her spear. The alien pulsed light in quick reassurance. "Not danger, family." "Of course," I muttered. "You teach one alien your number, suddenly the whole clan's on the doorstep." The chord repeated, closer this time. My suit sensors picked up multiple contacts moving in formation, their signatures similar to our new friend, but varied, different arrangements, different harmonics. The Glassmare's old docking clamps, which had been sulking for days, suddenly perked up as if they wanted to impress someone. "How many?" I asked. The alien rotated a plate, catching the starlight. The answer came through in tone and gesture. "Enough to sing louder." Leora glanced at me. "This may exceed our original mission parameters." I sighed. "Yeah, we're gonna need more cheese." When the newcomers arrived, they didn't dock so much as drape themselves around the station, overlapping in patterns that looked accidental until you realized they were forming a vast antenna. The combined structure began transmitting the song, amplified until it seemed like even the cometary halo could hum along. Peg was ecstatic. It sent every working drone to deliver welcome packets, station maps, repair schedules, and apparently my personnel file, because one of the aliens tried to imitate my hair. We monitored from control as the song carried into the dark. Leora leaned on the console, eyes on the readouts. "They are not just fixing this place," she said. "They are making it part of something larger." "Let's hope the larger thing likes us," I said. "If it does not," she said, "we will talk. If talking fails, we will fight. That is our agreement." "And if fighting fails?" She smiled faintly. "Then we hope it has a sense of humor." I was about to answer when Peg pinged a new message from our lattice friend. "Thank you. Keep the song. Stay." It was the closest thing to an invitation I'd heard in weeks. Leora met my gaze over the glow of the console, and for the first time since we'd stepped into the arena, I thought maybe we were already choosing the same door. The Glassmare was no longer lonely. Where there had been silence, there was now a living weave of light and song. The lattice beings had anchored themselves into the station's frame like ivy on an old house, mending, reinforcing, and occasionally redecorating without asking. Peg had stopped sulking entirely. Its drones zipped through corridors delivering parts, music snippets, and cheese to anyone willing to accept them. The council's recall ping came 3 days later, crisp and official. Return with report and TERMS. Leora read it twice before setting it aside. They will want the station under their banner, she said, and the visitors will want it to remain a friend. Maybe we convince both, I said, or at least keep them from throwing furniture. We drafted the proposal together. The Glassmere as neutral territory, maintained jointly by the council and the lattice's kin, Peg as liaison and occasional poet. We wrapped it in enough ceremonial language to keep diplomats happy and enough practical clauses to keep engineers from mutinying. The alien chorus approved with a ripple of warm harmonics. Peg approved by programming my quarters to smell like cinnamon, which was a welcome improvement over recycled helmet foam. The return trip was a parade. The lattice beings drifted alongside our courier in loose formation, their combined antenna still singing the revised song into the void. Leora stood at the forward viewport, her ears lifted, the rings catching the starlight in slow flashes. "I did not expect this," she said. "Which part? The diplomacy, the music, or Peg developing a crush?" "All," she said. "Even you." I let that sit in the air between us because some things didn't need deflecting. "Same," I finally said, "especially me." The council chamber was packed. The story of the duel had clearly outgrown itself. Now it was about how two opponents had walked into a broken station and come out with a song that crossed species. Leora spoke first, measured and precise, weaving honor into every clause. I followed, filling in the blanks with enough humor to keep the mood from tipping into pomp. When the vote came, it passed without dissent. The Glassmere would stand as a shared outpost, its song part of the official traffic beacons, its alien guests free to come and go. Peg was recognized as Special Envoy, a title it immediately printed on every drone chassis in foot-high letters. After the formalities, there was one last audience, the clan elders of House Sable. Leora faced them without armor head high. "The challenge I issued has been met," she said. "Victory is mutual." The eldest regarded her, then me. "And the wager?" Leora's gaze didn't waver. "We have chosen a third path, partnership without chains, without ceremony, for now." I added, "Trial still ongoing. Recommend at least 7 more cycles before anyone decides on joint furniture." The elders murmured, one inclined his head, honor kept. Outside, as the suns angled low over the city's glass and steel, we walked together toward the shuttle pads. "So," I said, "we're not married, I'm not your slave, and we have joint custody of an AI who writes love songs to architecture." "Correct," she said, "sounds like a win." She tilted her head, ears forward. "You have changed, Elia's ward." "Yeah," I said. "I came here thinking survival meant winning. Turns out, it means finding someone worth standing next to when the song changes key." The wind carried the distant echo of the Glassmare's melody, already part of the city's soundscape. Leora smiled.